Welcome everyone to the fifth installment of the Food Safety Fridays How-To webinar series. We're going to be breaking down key components of FSMA's produce safety rule and discussing how to approach the requirements in a way that makes sense and makes them achievable on your farm. This series is brought to you by the Maryland Food Safety Network, and that's a group of produce safety specialists from the University of Maryland Extension, the Agriculture Law Education Initiative, and the Maryland Department of Agriculture. My name's Sarah Everhart, and the presenter today will be Dr. Angela Forelli. She's an agent associate at the University of Maryland. On to today's webinar topic, how to develop a sanitation program. The produce safety rule outlines that food contact surfaces need regular cleaning and sanitizing schedules, and that non-food contact surfaces should be cleaned and maintained so that those do not become a source of foodborne pathogen contamination. But how do you determine what tools and equipment to use? And once you identify which surfaces are food contact surfaces, how often should you clean and sanitize those surfaces, and what methods are most effective? And last but not least, what records need to be kept about all of these activities? So those are some of the topics that we will be going through today. And with that, I will turn it over to Angela.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for that wonderful introduction, and welcome everyone to today's seminar. So today I'm going to be sharing a little bit with you guys about how we can develop good sanitation programs that align with the PSR and also align with our own personal missions in our farm operations. So, as with every presentation in the seminar series, this content is a collaborative effort among all members of the Maryland Food Safety Network. So if you have any questions about what you hear today or any other food safety questions, please feel free to reach out to any one of us at any time. Similarly, this webinar, like all university programs, is available to all without regard to race, color, sex, gender identity or expression, sexual orientation, marital status, age, national origin, political affiliation, physical or mental disability, religion, protected veteran status, genetic information, personal appearance, or any other legally protected class. So during this installment, we're going to talk about the PSR requirements that are all outlined in blue there, related to managing risks at harvest and post-harvest with your tools, your equipment, and your buildings, and how to set up things that, again, align with the PSR, but also work for you. We're going to be looking at the process flow as a whole, at the point where a product gets picked, through staging and post-harvest processes. We're going to look at food contact surfaces, identify which of those should have a rigorous cleaning and sanitizing schedule, figure out what sort of schedules work for you, talk about how to choose the right sanitizer that works for you, and also some other organization tips to make your post-harvest processes a success to ensure the best quality and safety of your product out to your customer. And we're going to finish up today a little bit with some record keeping, how we're going to write this down. So harvest activities in the pack house are an important part of your food safety culture on your farm because all of your product flows through either the pack house or interacts with a harvesting implement at one point. So that means if sporadic contamination is present in the field, it can become a widespread issue and affect a whole lot of product by passing through a pack house where good organization and food safety practices aren't in place. So I've outlined here some of the common hazards we have to contend with at harvest and post-harvest, and that's contaminants coming from tools or packing and sorting equipment that aren't maintained in a sanitary manner, cross-contamination from vehicles entering inside the pack house with manure or other contaminants on their tires, water like standing water or leaking water from dirty condensers. Remember from the water talks that water can be a vehicle for germ transmission. So in the pack house, especially on floors and in the cold room, we're managing and keeping a specific eye out for Listeria, which is one of those foodborne pathogen bacteria that we want to manage, and that particular bacteria can grow at refrigerated temperatures. But fortunately, we can implement good organizational flow of the pack house, worker training, and cleaning and sanitizing schedules, and all three of those things really work together quite nicely to significantly reduce any food safety risk to your product during harvesting and packing. So to construct these practices, just like in the last webinar for wildlife, we're going to make a risk assessment. So we're going to take a critical look at what your operation is, what all the activities are going on, and identify points of interest or areas of concern, and then construct policies and practices that we can put in place to tailor those that are tailored for those specific concerns. So to do that for harvest and post-harvest in this module, we want to think about, number one, we want to mentally follow the product from seedling to pack out. We want to think about how it's harvested, where it gets staged, does it get washed or does it get harvested dry, how is it packed, etc. Then think about, what are the food contact surfaces that we have? Is everything hand-picked, or are we using a mechanical harvesting implement, or are we using just a simple tool? Are we picking into cardboard containers, or are we picking into plastic lugs? And how many surfaces after we pick does that product touch before it gets to the consumer? So with those two in mind, then we can start developing what the organizational needs are going to be for your operation. So your worker training needs and also your cleaning and sanitizing needs. In this presentation, we're going to get most in depth with cleaning and sanitizing, but in our references at the end, we have also compiled a good list of sample policies and SOPs that you can put in place to also give you some success in post-harvest, in your post-harvest operation. Okay, so the first step in developing a sanitation program is to identify all of those food contact surfaces, and you might have heard of them before as Zone 1 surfaces. So think about what your product touches in pre-harvest all the way out transport to customer. You can see here that there are various surfaces. We've got a lettuce harvester that your product is going to touch. We've got when we're unloading into the pack house, we have plastic lugs here that your product touches. We have some plastic liners, or we got this right here also, that's a food contact surface. And then in our cold room too, you might have some food contact surfaces. All right, so to get a little bit of engagement here, I've provided two pictures. And as you can probably see, there are a variety of different food contact surfaces in these two pictures. So why don't you go ahead and pop into the chat any pieces of equipment that you see in these two pictures that are food contact surfaces. So I'll give you about 30 seconds to roll in your answers here. I've got the chat up right here so I can see what we're saying. Any food contact surfaces that we see? All right, I've got yellow bin. Yes, exactly right. That yellow bin's a food contact surface. We've got a screen table. That could be. We've got brushes in this equipment. Yes. Great. We got the round table. That is a food contact surface. Belt on conveyor. Exactly right. Grater surface. Fabulous. Cutting board. The knives in the background. Exactly. Yes. Great job. So yeah, those are all examples of food contact surfaces that would need an associated cleaning and sanitizing schedule to align with the PSR. And I've got little stars aligned up here in yellow. And what you can see is that even the sides of these pieces of equipment could be food contact surfaces. And you can see in the bottom right picture right here that there is some dirt that we see. And this piece of equipment was just recently cleaned when I took this picture. So this is signaling to me that maybe the operator has got to rethink how we are doing our cleaning methods and our sanitizing methods to get a better clean and really remove that dirt off that surface. Okay, so similarly here, food contact surfaces in these pictures, I would say we've got the troughs are food contact surfaces because as the pieces of lettuce are growing, the leaves are touching the sides of the trough. So those are food contact surfaces. And then I would also say the recirculating water tank, although that the water tank itself is not a food contact surface, it should also be cleaned and sanitized at a reduced frequency because contamination here can lead to contamination into our irrigation water. And we definitely don't want that. So keeping in mind, all the moving parts of your operation in terms of selecting what should have cleaning and sanitizing schedules. So we wanted to highlight gloves, aprons, and other wearables that your employees might have as things that we might not initially think about when we think about food contact surfaces. If you're using cloth gloves or aprons or other sort of wearables in your operation, make policies for wearing them that you're going to train your workers on. So it's a good idea to make policies about how to work when they have the gloves on, what they shouldn't be touching when they have gloves on. Train them to know where to put dirty gloves at the end of the day to signal that that needs to be cleaned before it goes back out and gets used in the field. And then another good thing to do is train everybody on where to store the clean gloves so everybody knows where to go to get a clean item. Similarly, vehicles are of interest here as well. So the beds of your vehicles might be food contact surfaces, and dirty beds and tires have the ability to transfer germs present into your pack house floors, equipment, and also possibly other food contact surfaces. So a really great way to reduce your risk with vehicles is to, number one, not allow vehicles inside the pack house. And you could do this by creating no-go zones with spray paint where the vehicle tires don't go beyond a certain point. So everybody knows, and a visual cues is very, it's very effective. Cleaning and sanitizing tires and beds of multi-purpose vehicles is another good thing to do, especially if you're working with manure, like if you're driving through manure applied fields, if you're hauling manure spreading equipment, or if you're hauling animals. Before you use that vehicle for food contact surfaces, it's really important to clean and sanitize before you go into use with fresh produce. And then if you have the ability to designate one vehicle as for manure use only, that's another good strategy to reduce your risk. So after we identify all the food contact surfaces that you currently have in circulation, then you want to ask yourself, okay, how can I clean and sanitize this? In general, easily cleanable and sanitizable surfaces are smooth, they're non-porous, and they're easy to get in there and access. This means things like plastic lugs, stainless steel, and some vinyl tarps, vinyl equipment will be relatively easy to clean and sanitize. But you also might find that in your current operation, you have surfaces like these, which require a little bit more consideration on how we can clean and sanitize them effectively. So for example, the nylon on this vegetable harvester is porous and it's attached to the equipment. So to sanitize this, we have to disconnect it. We might have to launder this thing separately and soak it in a sanitizer. So it's going to take more time on your part and more careful consideration about that piece of equipment, right? In the middle here, we've got a brush in the vegetable washer. So that brush, the inner bristles of that brush are going to be hard to reach to get a really good clean. So again, it's going to require a little bit more time and maybe more specialized tools to get in there and access it for a good, appropriate clean and sanitizing. And then finally, we have wood. Wood is rough and porous. It's notoriously hard to clean and sanitize. The roughness of the wood create really good niches for microbes to get in there and create community. So that is a challenge for cleaning and sanitizing for sure. Our friends at the University of Vermont, at the bottom here, I've provided a link. They go into a lot of really good detail about how to evaluate how cleanable and sanitizable different pieces of equipment are that you have, and how you can make small changes to moderate changes to help you figure out how to make this a little bit more cleanable and a little bit more sanitizable. So if you have a hard to sanitize surface like foam or wood, or if you're using cardboard or wax impregnated cardboard, think about how we can implement practices to maintain that surface and keep it clean. So how does that surface support bacterial growth? Does it get dirty really easily and mucky really easily? Can we at least clean the surface really well with soap and dry it fully? Can you put a liner in this that's single use that can be cleaned and sanitized? Or can you make the item itself a single use item? If those strategies won't work for you, can you think about any practices that you can implement so you wouldn't need that piece of equipment as a food contact surface? So those are the sort of questions you want to ask yourself before we get to the point where we're thinking about considering upgrades. We want to try to work with you with what you've got. And in many cases we can. There are some cases though, as you are able to invest in upgrades, that will be the best option. So if you do find that the surface that you have is easily cleanable and sanitizable, then the question becomes, what's your approach going to be? What's the method you're going to use for cleaning and sanitizing? How often are you going to do it? And what do you need to write down? So that's what we're going to talk about next. In the PSR language, it states that you should clean and sanitize when necessary and appropriate food contact surfaces, and that verbiage means that you as the operator have a little bit of flexibility in determining what the exact schedule is for cleaning and sanitizing. How often you clean and sanitize is going to be based on the piece of equipment, what you use it for, how dirty it gets in regular use. So for use, you want to think about, are we using it every day? If you do, that would signal that it should be cleaned and sanitized on a regular basis. Does the item get wet a lot? By the end of the day, do you see caked on dirt or other soils on the piece of equipment? So although we can't really see microbes, visual indications of soil can let us know that it's time to clean and sanitize that item. And then another thing to consider is, did this item come in contact with a potential contaminant? So for example, did you use this little shovel here to shovel around poop, and then you're intending later to use it for fresh produce? We certainly want to clean and sanitize between any time a piece of equipment is used for any manure contact or anything else that could introduce a potential contaminant onto it before we use it for fresh produce. So other examples are, your truck bed. If you're hauling animals and then you're going to haul watermelons in that truck bed afterwards, you definitely want to clean and sanitize between that. Another example is your plastic lugs that you bring to the farmer's market. People are touching those plastic lugs. So when they come back from the farmer's market, we'd recommend cleaning and sanitizing them before you use them out in your field, right? Because you don't know what sort of contaminants could be on people's hands at the farmer's market. So to help you organize how often you think you'll need to clean and sanitize different tools and equipment, you might want to list it all out. So I have this worksheet here, and it's provided in the QR code at the end as sort of a scratch paper for you to list out all of the food contact surfaces you have that will need a cleaning and sanitizing schedule. And also what's helpful is to kind of outline what you use it for, right? And that will inform what the schedules that work for you are going to be. So a finished worksheet like this can serve you as your master cleaning and sanitizing list. You can also use this worksheet to provide any shorthand abbreviations for equipment for quick record keeping. So you don't have to write down the full name of everything every time when you write it down. And then also it provides a space to list what specific SOPs, if you have any specific SOPs for cleaning sorts of equipment here, which again will help in ease of record keeping because you can just refer to a specific SOP. So let's revisit again the piece about the schedule being determined by you. So armed with the information we just heard about tool use, capacity for dirt, interaction with potential contaminants, let's do a small exercise for how we think we should devise a schedule for these 4 items here. So we've got a bank of cleaning and sanitizing these tools either daily, weekly, as a stack becomes dirty, between uses with covered and non-covered crops. So if you remember from the PSR, covered crops are things that are commonly consumed raw, and non-covered crops are things that are rarely consumed raw. So these will be beets and winter squash, things like that. And then our 5th option is at the beginning or the end of the season. All right, so open up your chat and I would love to hear what people think about number 1. So we've got harvest knives used daily for cabbage. What do you think would be an appropriate schedule for number 1? Okay, I'm seeing A, daily. Great. Yeah, exactly. So since they're used a lot, I would also recommend cleaning and sanitizing them on a very regular basis daily. I have heard people use strategies like cleaning the implement at the end of the day and storing it, and then before use the next day, spraying sanitizer. That will work because even though you're separating those 2 activities, what you are sanitizing is cleaned. So that will work. What about number 2, harvest totes for tomatoes? Now, I will say that it's not just one answer. We could have multiple answers here that might be appropriate. I hear C, I'm seeing A and C. Okay, great. Yep, great. So you could do it daily. That would definitely be best practice, but a lot of operations don't have the time to clean and sanitize all their harvest totes daily, or most of them daily. So what we have seen in the field is to clean and sanitize them really well at the beginning of the season. And as you use them, dry brush them out and visually inspect them as you use them every day. And when you see that one gets a little mucky that you cannot just dry brush out, then you could put that one to the side. And when you get a stack of 10 or so, then you could take all of those 10 and then take the time to clean and sanitize all of those 10. So that certainly works as well. Great job, everyone. So in terms of larger equipment that has a lot of variable surfaces, like the vegetable washer and sorter, It would also be a good idea to clean and sanitize this, start clean and do it at the beginning of the season. You could implement something if it works for you to do it weekly. You might also find that you need to do it more often than weekly because it's getting dirtier than what a weekly cleaning and sanitizing can do. And then also between uses with covered and non-covered crops. So if you're running beets through and then you want to run cucumbers through, we would recommend certainly running a cleaning and sanitizing run through between the beets and the cucumbers, right? And then with cold rooms, again, cold rooms may or may not have food contact surfaces directly on them, but we do know that a dirty cold room does have the ability to transfer germs from other surfaces like walls or the condenser onto your product if the room isn't maintained in a sanitary manner. That was a great job. Good job for everyone putting their thinking hats on there with our cleaning and sanitizing schedules. So I wanted to bring to your attention this term of deep clean for these bigger pieces of equipment and your buildings, the vegetable washer and the cold room. This is where a deep clean is somewhere where you would take the time to break a piece of equipment apart, not really break it, but take it apart. Or for a cold room, you would remove different other surfaces from the cold room, like the racks, and you take the time to really get in there and clean and sanitize very thoroughly. And so that's called a deep clean. We'd really recommend starting the season off with a deep clean. So you can do that either in late February. Some people do it in January if it's not too cold. And that way you're set up for success for your season. It's also a good idea to deep clean big pieces of equipment at the end of the season as part of your winterizing procedure. And then whenever an event happens where you think the safety of that room was compromised, you can also initiate a deep clean. So they will take a little bit of time, but our friends at the University of Cornell have outlined really thorough checklists for breaking a piece down, a washer grater, and those of you who have barrel washers, please feel free to look at this resource, and it goes step by step of how to break different things down and get in there for a good clean. Also, the University of Maryland this year came out with a good video for how to break down a cold storage room as well. And so you could check that out on our YouTube channel. So now we're going to move on to talk about the method that you're going to use to clean and sanitize, the method that you choose to do so. As we learned in the PSA training, cleaning, remember, is a different and separate activity from sanitizing. Where cleaning removes dirt, and sanitizing reduces the number of microbes on a surface. If you're short on time, you might be tempted to spray a surface with concentrated sanitizer before cleaning it. However, just want to belabor that point. It does not matter the concentration of sanitizer. If you're spraying it on a dirty surface, the sanitizer is only going to interact with that dirt, and you're not going to get the kill that you need underneath. So you'll really just be wasting that money. And we know that some sanitizers are expensive, and we don't want you to waste your time or your money. So if you do choose to do a cleaning and sanitizing event, go through the whole process so you're being effective. What we're also finding is that it's really important to let the surface dry before you use it. And this gives the sanitizer the correct amount of time to actually do its work. And we can also, we also know that keeping things wet all the time can encourage unwanted microbial growth, and we don't want that. So clean and sanitize with a frequency that allows it to dry. And then finally, don't forget to record it. And we'll talk about that in a few slides. So we know a lot of operators in Maryland use power washers to clean organic matter off of a surface. And so we know that power washers can be effective, but we want to have you keep in mind a couple of best management practices to make sure that we're doing it safely. So, power washers get that grime off the surface, but that grime that we're kicking up does have the potential to cross-contaminate and get splashed onto food contact surfaces in the area. So if you are power washing, we would recommend that if you can, power wash outside of the packing house, or if you're doing it inside a room, take everything, all the food contact surfaces out of that room before you start power washing. We'd also recommend hooking up to a detergent if you can, so you can get that surfactant for a better clean, a better breakdown of those organic matter. Definitely don't direct the power washer into the drain. Drains are where we most regularly find listeria, so we don't want anything in the drain to get kicked up onto our other surfaces and create a problem for our food contact surfaces in our pack house. And then finally, we would also recommend wearing a mask because it is kicking up a lot of dirt and grime, and we don't want you to inhale that. All right, so moving to sanitizer choices for your operation, the chemical that you're going to choose is going to be based on the surface you're trying to clean, if you're pursuing organic certification or not, what is the capacity that you have and your workers have to monitor different things, like what sort of strips you've got in your pack house to monitor, and what your budget is. So there are a couple of general categories of sanitizers that you can choose among. There's chlorine, which is your pure bright bleach. This is also your sodium hypochlorite. There are iodophores you can use. I haven't really seen these in circulation in Maryland yet. There are peroxyacetic acids you can use. So these are your Sanidates. These are your tsunamis. You can also use quaternary ammonium products. That is, Ecolab has a 146 multi-quat sanitizer. So all of those are examples of sanitizers in these categories. And you can see that all of these sanitizer categories have some pros and some limitations as well. So if you've got stainless steel equipment, we want to be careful about using chlorine because it has a high corrosive potential, right? If you're looking for something that has a lot of residual activity, quaternary ammonium is a good choice because it stays on a surface and it's active on that surface for a while, right? So what you choose is kind of going to be based on what you're prioritizing for your farm. I know in Maryland, the big ones that people use, a lot of people use Pure Bright bleach and a lot of people use Sanidate. So a little bit more about sanitizers. Remember that sanitizers are registered pesticides, so they must be used according to the label. And that label is going to give you a lot of really important information about how to use that sanitizer effectively and safely. So it's going to tell you what surfaces you can use it on, if it's available for use in vegetable wash water or in irrigation water, or in our case on food contact surfaces. It's going to tell you what concentration to mix up, how long to leave it on the surface so it can do its job, and if a final rinse is needed. So this is all really important because if we don't use sanitizers, if we're using things that are too concentrated or we're not following the label, we can, our workers can get hurt. We definitely don't want that. And if we're using a too dilute concentration, then we're not getting effective kill on our surface. So one really good way to find a complete up-to-date label, if it's not printed directly on the bottle, is to search it using the EPA registration number. So though that's going to be found as a tiny number on the side of the bottle, it's here, under the storage and disposal pieces. And on Pure Bright bleach, it's under some information about what sort of organisms this chemical is effective against. So what I like to do, especially if I'm kind of sure what product I want to use and I just want to find what the up-to-date label is, if it's not on the bottle, I go straight to the EPA website, and they have a label system that they update quite regularly. The last time they updated it was September 12th. So you could put your EPA registration number right into this label system and it will pull up the label that you can download, have for reference. You can print it out and give it to your workers, and you can search through to find the instructions for your specific food contact surface that you're trying to sanitize. If you're not sure what product to use, you can surf a list of products with the Produce Safety Alliance Excel Sanitizer tool. So this gets updated every so often too. The last time the labels were updated on this was August of 2019. So if you do find a product on here, I would recommend cross-checking it to make sure you've got the up-to-date label. There's also a good video tutorial available online that takes you through how exactly to use all this. What I like to do is toggle over to the single product sheet, and that looks like this. And so you can have a drop-down list of all the different sanitizers that you can choose from, and it will come up what alternative brand names you might find them as. It will come up what sort of chemicals, what's the predominant chemical species in that sanitizer, which can be helpful. It references the label. It will give you a quick reference guide to what surfaces you can use that sanitizer for in wash water, food contact surfaces, irrigation water. It can also tell you if it is approved by OMRI, and some of them also have information for who to call to purchase the product. So a lot of good info in this database here. So when it comes to checking sanitizer concentration, this is another really important thing, mixing up the sanitizer to the right concentration. So we would recommend, especially if you're using it as a spray, not to mix up too much at one time because sanitizer will go bad after, a week or 2 weeks, depending on, it might say so on the bottle too. You might get other instructions. So if you're using small amounts, just kind of make what you need and train everybody on how to mix it up and how to check the concentration. So in terms of how to mix it up, there's a really good sanitizer concentration calculator here that you can plug and chug, and it will help you find the right volume to mix up to get the right concentration that's referenced on the label. So that's a helpful resource. Depending on where you buy your sanitizer from, the manufacturer might send you this nice SOP, and they also might send you strips. If they don't send you strips, you can buy your own from online. I've gotten some from the web supply store. That's a good place to get them. Make sure that the strips cover the concentration range that you're looking for. So for example, if you're looking to have a final concentration of, say, 200 ppm, we want those sanitizer concentration test strips to go up to something like 300. So it gets the bound, so you can know that what the concentration you're looking for is actually, what it actually is. So make sure the strips reflect the concentration you need, and make sure the strips are not expired, because I think they expire probably, I think most of them are like a year, 2 years, maybe less. So finishing up here on what we write down, we just wanted to bring your attention to some of the red tape stuff that you can implement onto your records and your record templates so that you can be aligned with the PSR. So this is an example of a common record that we would see on a farm. There are some really good elements that are recorded here, and then we would just recommend that person adding a couple other things to be PSR compliant. So what's good here is that they've got the date that the activity is done, they've got what the chemical name is, and they have the initials of the person doing the sanitizing. That's good. What we would also recommend to add is the farm name and address on the top of this record. This person has just a check mark for food contact surfaces, and for the PSR, you want to write down what that piece of equipment actually is. So this is where an abbreviation or a key or a legend can really help you out here, so you don't have to long form write it out every single time. It also wants you to reference, the PSR also wants you to reference the method you're using for cleaning and sanitizing. So if you've got SOPs at the ready, then you can just reference the SOPs here to provide a little more information. And then for the PSR, make sure that this record, once it's all filled out, gets reviewed, signed, and dated by a supervisor and is filed for at least 2 years past the date of this last entry here. So aside from the act of cleaning and sanitizing, being organized and creating a process flow can aid in post-harvest safety and quality. First, it's a good idea to set up your post-harvest operations so that product flow comes in from the field in one area and goes out to the customer in a unidirectional manner. So clean, packed produce doesn't have the chance to interact with freshly harvested stuff coming in from the field. So similarly with your food contact surfaces, staging dirty bins outside the packing house can signal that they are not ready to be used yet and they need to be cleaned and sanitized before they go into the packing house. So it's minimizing the amount of dirt and grime that's coming in that you later have to remediate. You can also designate tools for use with food contact surfaces and tools for cleaning other things. So this is all in mind of like keeping clean things clean, keeping dirty things dirty. We definitely don't want the scrubby brush that's used to clean the floors to also clean our produce lugs, right? And then finally, use a system that is visual and easy to read by your workers to indicate when something is clean and ready to use and when something needs to be cleaned and sanitized. So you can either do storing them in a specific place like we talked about earlier, or you can orient them in a specific direction. So here, everything that's oriented down is clean, sanitized, and ready to go. And to follow all this, our friends at the University of Vermont, again, have even more information about improving process flow in their blog. So finally, don't forget that worker training, especially in post-harvest, is essential to implementing all the great policies and practices that you are putting in place for post-harvest success and safety. A good place to start is by showing them the MDA's worker training videos for post-harvest. They're available here. They're in English and Spanish, and you can supplement this training with any specific activities that you're doing in your post-harvest practices to get them fully trained on what your expectations are for cleaning and sanitizing and for general, housekeeping and maintenance. So in summary, in this talk, we learned that you're not expected to clean and sanitize everything daily, but when you do clean and sanitize things, we hope that you learned some good tips and tricks to use the most effective and efficient techniques. And building onto that, we hope that you feel a little bit more empowered after today's talk to create the schedules and choose the sanitizers that work specifically for your operation, what tools that you're using. And then finally, organization and worker training are a large part of maintaining safety and quality post-harvest. So all three of those things together, organization, worker training, cleaning and sanitizing schedules, will give you some good success post-harvest. So with that, I'd like to do a little plug for our next seminar. The next one is going to be October 16th. We're going to talk about how to apply, handle, and store biological soil amendments. So that's going to be your manure or your aged manure or your chicken litter. So go register today at Food Safety Fridays at eventbrite.com. And all of the links that Sarah put in the chat today, as well as the Excel plugins and some good references and a worksheet, are all available on this QR code right here. You can just open up your camera phone or your camera on your phone and hover over the picture, and it should direct you to download a PDF. So with that, I will take any questions you may have.
How often should we sanitize gloves?
So yeah, if these are cloth gloves, we want to think about how often are they used, how dirty are they getting when we use them. I would say best practices is to have them laundered after the day's use if they get, regular use if they get dirty. And that would just be having someone taking them home and laundering them. Definitely, I think on the order of weekly is kind of pushing it. So anywhere between there, especially if you're doing things like working with tomatoes and we're getting that green trichome stuff all over them, we definitely want to clean them more often. Yeah, whenever they get visibly soiled. So I would say air to the sides of daily, on the order of daily.